Welcome to This Explainer. We're tackling a fascinating and, frankly, pretty urgent topic in commercial security today. Okay, let's just jump right in. I want you to picture a piece of surveillance footage that recently made huge waves among security experts in Northern California. We're looking at a camera shop on a busy Berkeley street. It's the dead of night. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a car backs squarely onto the sidewalk and just smashes straight through the front of the store. The entire event, literally from the moment of impact to the thieves walking out with armfuls of high-value inventory, takes about 60 seconds. It's an absolutely shocking display of brute force.
Just let this description sink in for a second. 4 people pull up in the middle of the night, back a car onto the sidewalk, and drive it through the front of the store. What makes this imagery so incredibly striking isn't even the speed of the attack. It's the fact that this specific camera shop wasn't defenseless. They actually had security equipment installed. Yet, these thieves breached a reinforced wall and were inside in mere seconds. It really forces us to completely reevaluate everything we think we know about keeping a building secure. Part 1. Anatomy of a break-in. Look, a breach through a door and a breach straight through a structural wall are entirely different problems operating on totally different physics. So we need to define exactly what we're dealing with here. It's called a ram raid. By definition, a ram raid is a burglary method where a vehicle, very often a stolen car or truck, is driven directly into a wall, a window, or a door. The goal? To create a massive entry point instantly. This is a pure brute force tactic. It's meant to completely bypass traditional locks and alarms so criminals can grab the inventory and escape long before the police even have a chance to arrive on the scene. Section 2. The rise of ram raids. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds like a rare Hollywood-style heist, but these specific, highly violent break-ins are not isolated anomalies anymore. They're popping up almost monthly in police digests across the Bay Area and the Sacramento Valley. And this growing tactical shift brilliantly illustrates one of the most fascinating concepts in physical security, the irony of better defenses. Over the last few years, storefronts got smart. They installed heavy-duty security shutters, they reinforced their front doors. Basically, the door stopped being the easy way in. The shutters actually did their job perfectly. But, criminals adapt. Because the doors became way too hard to pry open with hand tools, the attackers simply shifted their focus to a different, more vulnerable surface, the walls and those large glass windows.
Of course, these attackers aren't just driving into random buildings. They're highly targeted. Police reports show that ram raids heavily target businesses holding high-margin, easy-to-move inventory that are located near a street. So we're primarily looking at cannabis dispensaries, jewelry stores, electronic shops, and vape and smoke shops. If your inventory is small, valuable, and easy to fence, well, you fit the exact profile for this specific type of threat.
Section 3. Why security shutters fail. So, we've got to ask the completely obvious question, right? If that Berkeley shop had a heavy-duty security shutter, why didn't it work? Why didn't it stop the car? Well, it really comes down to the exact engineering purpose of the hardware. Think about what a standard security shutter is actually meant to stop. A person, a crowbar, a brick, a hammer, or maybe someone's hand reaching through a smashed window. It is brilliantly designed to deter human threats standing in front of the store with hand tools. But a shutter is simply never engineered to stop a multi-ton vehicle carrying massive forward momentum. A car coming at a wall brings thousands and thousands of pounds of kinetic energy. The shutter doesn't fail against a vehicle-based attack because it's a bad product. It fails because a multi-ton truck is entirely outside of its intended threat profile. But wait, the plot thickens. When you look closer at that footage, the Berkeley shop didn't just rely on shutters. They actually had bollards, those short metal posts set into the ground, installed right in front of the sidewalk. It was their secondary physical barrier against vehicles. And yet, incredibly, the car still got right through to the wall. So how does an anti-vehicle barrier actually fail to stop a vehicle? It comes down to the physics of poor installation. First, we have spacing failures. In the Berkeley video, the bollards were simply placed too far apart. A bollard line is honestly only as good as its gaps, and a compact car just slipped right through. Second, we have mounting failures. The absolute best bollards are sunk 3 to 4 feet deep into solid concrete. But cheap ones, they're just bolted to the surface with a few lag screws. When a car hits those surface-mounted screws, they instantly shear off, turning what you thought was a hardened security device into, basically, mere sidewalk decoration. Part 4. Building a layered defense. This reality forces a complete paradigm shift for property owners. We've got to stop thinking about security as a single, magic product decision, and instead start constructing a multi-layered defense system. Let's walk through how these layers interact. First, lighting removes hiding spots, but it obviously can't physically stop entry.
Second, alarms shorten the time thieves are willing to stay inside, but they don't keep intruders out to begin with. Third, cameras capture great evidence for your insurance, but a camera has literally never locked a door or stopped a car. Fourth, security shutters are your physical barrier against humans and hand tools, but as we just learned, they absolutely won't stop a multi-ton vehicle. And finally, deep-sunk bollards stop vehicular impacts, but they do absolutely nothing to prevent a guy with a hammer from smashing a window. Every single layer covers a vulnerability that the others leave totally exposed. And here is the truly sobering truth of the matter. If you look closely at how these layers interact, you realize that if the bollard layer is missing, a ram raid instantly renders every other security measure useless. A car smashing through your wall breaks your lights, ignores your cameras, easily bypasses your shutters, and turns your alarm into nothing more than background noise while they load up their stolen goods. Section 5. Assessing your geographic risk. Now take a breath, because not every single business needs to be losing sleep over ram raids. The threat is actually highly concentrated based on the physical layout of the property itself. To understand your risk, I want you to mentally walk outside your business right now. Stand on the street and look back at your storefront. Ask yourself this very simple, direct question. Could a vehicle physically reach my wall or my window from the street? Based on the patterns found in regional police reports, here are the architectural layouts that are getting hit the most. You're in the high-risk pool if you're on a corner lot, if your walls directly face a parking lot, or if your building sits right at the end of a driveway. Standalone buildings are major targets, as are storefronts with wide sidewalks that have no curb breaks to naturally slow a vehicle down. If this sounds like your layout, you definitely have a physical exposure. Conversely, let's look at the low-risk geographies. If your storefront features deep setbacks from the road, if you're located right in the middle of a city block, or if you're in a strip mall center pressed tightly against other businesses on either side, you're largely protected from this specific vehicle threat. If you fall into this category, you likely do not need to invest the significant capital required for heavy, deep-sunk anti-vehicle bollards. Your focus should really just remain on solid shutters and alarms. So, what should we actually take away from all this? Well, here are your clear, actionable steps for today. Step 1. Physically walk your property to assess that geographic risk we just talked about. Step 2. Run a ruthless audit on your current security layers. Do you have lights, alarms, cameras, shutters, and, if your geography requires it, bollards? Most businesses, honestly, only have about 3 out of the 5. Step 3. Once you identify your missing layer, go hire a dedicated specialist to fill that specific gap. And speaking of specialists, there's a massive warning you need to heed here. Security shutters and ground bollards require totally different trades. It's completely different skill sets. Shutters are all about overhead carpentry and structural mounting. Bollards require concrete coring, deep ground anchoring, and heavy right-of-way city permitting. Never ever let a shutter company casually tell you they'll just throw in some bollards as a quick add-on without verifying their concrete credentials, because that is exactly how you end up with surface-mounted decoration that simply falls over the moment a bumper touches it. I want to wrap up our explainer today by sharing a quote that perfectly distills this entire philosophy. A storefront with all 5 layers is hard to crack. A storefront with just 1 or 2 is a coin flip. It just perfectly summarizes the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of treating your security as a complete ecosystem, rather than just a single checklist item. Which leaves us with one final urgent thought to consider. Take a hard look at your own storefront, your own inventory, and your own physical geography. Which side of the coin is your business on right now?